Today is the 150th day of 2023. So far this year, there have been 263 mass shootings reported in the United States. 327 victims have been killed in those incidents. Both those figures are the highest ever recorded this early in a year. Just over Memorial Day weekend, there were more than 20 reported mass shootings. Those resulted in the deaths of at least 16 victims and injured more than 90 victims. So with us now to discuss gun violence in this country is Adam Brown and David Pucino. Adam is the Vice Provost for Research and Associate Professor of Psychology at the New School. David is the Deputy Chief Counsel for the Giffords Law Center to prevent gun violence. David, I want to start with you. Let's talk about why shootings this year seem to be more deadly. And is there anything that can be done? And, I'm just asking that question, thinking of a million different ways. But from your perspective, from your expertise, for them to be less deadly?
Well, I think there are three major factors that have led to this increase that we're seeing, not just this year, but this general pattern of increases in gun violence and mass shootings. One of them is the readily availability of weapons to people who shouldn't have them. Another dynamic that we're seeing in large measure is that the weapons that people do have are often higher caliber. If you look at just casualty numbers, if somebody is shot with a low caliber .22 bullet, they're going to be less likely to be killed by that shooting than if somebody is shot by a medium caliber bullet or a large caliber bullet. In fact, if it's a Magnum style large caliber bullet, it's over 4 times likely they're going to be killed. And finally, the last factor I'd point to is the availability of large capacity magazines that make these shooting incidents much more deadly.
Adam, I want to bring you in now. When we in America launch this conversation around gun violence, there are two headlines. One is the guns, another is mental health. Talk to us about, people point at mental health as a reason for such high amounts of violence. What do you say?
Yeah, it makes sense to me that we would point to mental illness and mental health issues as a cause for such extreme, tragic violence in our country. But when we actually step back and look at the data, what we often find is that people with severe mental illness are less likely, if not any more likely than the general population, to cause harm to other people. And some research suggests that they're actually more likely to be victims of violence. What we do know is there's a complex set of factors, usually beginning in childhood or early adulthood, where people are exposed to violence that leads to this upward trajectory of feeling disempowered, disengaged, often aggrieved for various reasons, that then leads to things that ultimately, people seeing as a way to cope and deal with the distress and crisis that they're in. But mental illness itself is only a small piece of a much more complex trajectory that often leads to mass shootings.
And I always just think that it's disingenuous to think that things are mutually exclusive. I mean, you can handle one thing while you can handle another. And when it comes to Congress and handling gun safety legislation, it seems like they're at an impasse. So, David, at this point, when we're relying either on the states or on the federal government to pass or not any gun safety legislation or meaningful, so how can people be safe? How can people who are living their lives keep themselves safe from gun violence?
No, I think it really is a responsibility of the government to pass laws that can make us safer. We know that those laws work. My organization catalogs every state in the country and ranks them based on the strength of their gun laws. And the stronger the gun laws, the lower the rates of gun death. And we've had a lot of progress at the state level. Last year, 91 states passed laws. We also had progress at the federal level with the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, but we need to do much more.
And Adam, just from a psychology standpoint, going back to that conversation, are there things that can be done to prevent shootings? One of the things that for us is very difficult as journalists covering these mass shootings over and over is you don't want to platform people who are committing these acts, but you also really want to inform on what to look out for. So, not just for us, but for the general public. How do you go about that? How do you spot what could be warning signs?
So we're pretty far from being able to predict who's going to be a mass shooter. But what we do know is that most mass shooters will share their plans with other people at some point before they commit the act. And most mass shooters will talk about harming themselves long before they commit some kind of mass shooting. What we need to do is really to train communities to be more prepared to notice when people are in distress, ways to help take care of them, keep them connected within their communities, and connect them to other forms of support, whether it's specialists, therapists, or doctors, to help them get the care and the connection they need long before it escalates into something like a mass shooting.
Take it seriously. Adam, David, thank you so much for your wisdom.
Thank you.